I saw them at the restaurant on a Thursday evening in November. I was alone. I had been alone for 4 months by then, 4 months since David had sat across from me at the kitchen table of the house we had shared for 6 years and had said the words that reorganized everything. 4 months since I had moved my belongings into a flat that smelled of someone else's cooking and had a bathroom window that looked out onto a brick wall. 4 months of learning what it felt like to be a person whose life had been removed from them while they were busy trying to maintain it. I was at the restaurant because Meg had insisted. You need to eat a proper meal somewhere that isn't your kitchen, she had said, and I had not had the energy to argue, and so I was sitting at a table for two with a glass of wine and a menu I was not really reading when I looked up and saw him. David, my husband, my ex-husband. The divorce had been finalized 3 weeks prior. At a table on the far side of the room. He was not alone. She was 26 years old and her name was Amanda, and she had been a member of the gym David attended, and I had met her twice at social events before I understood what she was. He was laughing, not the careful, managed laugh of a man who is aware of being seen by someone who has a right to his discomfort. A real laugh, relaxed, present, the laugh of a man who is exactly where he wants to be. She was looking at him the way I used to look at him. I picked up my wine glass. I took a careful sip. And I thought, with the specific clarity of someone who has been in the middle of something too long to see it clearly and has just been given an unexpected view from the outside. This is the lowest it gets. From here it can only go one direction. I was right about that. But it took longer than I wanted it to, and it was harder than I wanted it to be, and the person I became at the end of it was someone I could not have recognized from where I was sitting in that restaurant on that Thursday evening. This is that story. I want to tell you about the 6 years because they are the thing that makes everything that comes after make sense. Not the dramatic version, not a marriage that was secretly terrible, not a man who was always who he turned out to be and a woman who refused to see it. The honest version. The honest version is that we were good together for a long time. Not perfectly matched, not without friction, but genuinely good, the specific warmth of two people who have chosen each other and are making the choosing work. David was 34 when we married, I was 31, and we had spent 2 years before the marriage building the kind of relationship that felt, when I examined it honestly, solid. He was funny. I want to say this because it is true and because the truth matters. He was funny in the specific dry way that makes a person feel, when they are in the middle of it, that they are sharing a private language with someone. The jokes that only land for the two of you, the shorthand, the look across a room that contains an entire conversation. I had that with him. It was real. He was also, I understand now, a man who needed a particular kind of relationship and who had, without fully examining the need, arranged our marriage to provide it. He needed to be the one who was doing well. The successful one. The one whose career was progressing, whose decisions were sound, whose judgment in the room was the judgment that prevailed. In the first years of the marriage, this had not been a problem. I was working in marketing at a communications firm, doing well but not dramatically. His career in finance was going faster. The dynamic had a natural shape and we fitted into it comfortably. Then I was offered the regional director position. I turned it down. I turned it down because the role required relocation for 18 months and David's project was in a critical phase and the timing was wrong and we had been talking about starting a family and there were many reasons and they were all real and none of them were untrue. But the person who had offered me the position, a woman named Ms. Howard who had been watching my work for 3 years and who called me 3 months after I declined to ask if I had reconsidered, said something to me that I had filed away and had not thought about again until much later. She said, "Opportunities like this have a shelf life, Kate. Make sure the things you're staying for are real and lasting." I thanked her and said I was sure. I had been sure. The shelf life of what I had stayed for turned out to be 4 more years. It changed gradually, in the way that the things that matter always change, not with a dramatic moment but with the slow accumulation of small differences that individually are explainable and collectively are a story. Year 4 was when I first noticed. David had been promoted. Not an extraordinary promotion, a natural progression for someone at his level with his track record. But the world it opened to him was different from the world we had occupied together, and the difference mattered in ways I was slow to understand. The clients were wealthier. The events were more exclusive. The other people in the rooms he was entering were not the people we had spent our 30s with. They were different in the specific way of people for whom money has been present long enough to change the texture of how they move through the world. And their wives, their partners, the women at those events, younger, mostly, and maintained in a way that required both money and time, which were the two things I had less of as my own career had been gradually arranged around David's schedule rather than its own. I noticed the noticing. I did not say anything. I told myself the noticing was paranoia and that the marriage was solid and that the friction I was feeling was the ordinary friction of a relationship entering its middle years and that every couple went through this and came out the other side. I was performing, for myself, the same things I had been performing for everyone else for 4 years. By year 5 the performances had become exhausting. The year before the end was the year I tried the hardest. I want to be honest about this because there is a specific shame in looking back at the year before and counting the things I did in the attempt to hold together something that was already decided in a direction I had not been informed of. I booked the trips. I suggested the dinners and made the reservations. I was present, attentive, warm, making myself available in the ways that I understood he responded to. I changed things about myself that I had not thought needed changing, the way I dressed for his events, the amount of time I spent in the social spaces his new world required. I gave up Thursday evenings, which had been my standing dinner with Meg, 7 years of them, the one commitment I had maintained as mine throughout the marriage, because David had started scheduling client entertainment on Thursdays and wanted me there. I gave up Thursdays. Meg said nothing. She rearranged to Tuesdays without complaint, which was either kindness or evidence that she could see what I could not see yet, and knowing Meg it was both. Looking back, the specific quality of that year is something I find difficult to describe without the distance making it look different from how it was. Inside it, the effort felt like love. The trying felt like investment. The willingness to reshape myself felt like the kind of flexibility that good partnerships require. From the outside, from where I sit now, from where Meg was sitting at the time, it looked like a woman making herself smaller and smaller in the hope that a smaller version of herself would fit more comfortably into a space that was no longer designed for her. I was the last to understand this. He told me on a Wednesday. Not out of nowhere. The distance of the preceding months had been real and I had felt it. The way you feel a temperature change, the gradual cooling that you register in your body before your mind has put a name to it. But the specific Wednesday was still a specific Wednesday. It was still the kitchen table. It was still his voice saying the things that cannot be unsaid once they are said. I think we should separate, he said. Not I love someone else. Not immediately. That came later, in the same conversation, after I had said why and he had been quiet for a moment in the way of a man who is deciding how much to give at once. There's someone, he said. It's been a few months. I looked at him across the kitchen table. Who? I said. He told me. Amanda, 26. The gym. I sat with this. How long? I said. 7 months, he said. 7 months. We had been on holiday 6 months ago. A week in Portugal, which I had planned and which had been, I had believed, good. We had been good on that holiday. I had believed we had been good. 7 months. I'm going to need you to leave, I said. Tonight. I need you to go somewhere else tonight. Kate. He left. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time after the door closed. Then I called Meg. She was at my door in 20 minutes, which was as fast as the tube allowed, and she sat across from me at the same kitchen table and she did not say I knew, which would have been true and which would have been the wrong thing, and she did not say you'll be fine, which would also have been eventually true and also wrong for that particular evening. She said, tell me. I told her. We sat at the kitchen table until 2 in the morning and she stayed on the sofa and I lay in the bed I had shared with David for 6 years and I did not sleep. The divorce took 4 months. David had the better lawyer, or rather, David had the lawyer he had always used for his professional affairs, a man who knew how to structure things cleanly and efficiently in directions that were, by design, efficient primarily for David. I had Ms. Reed, who was thorough and honest and who told me clearly what I was entitled to and what the realistic outcomes were. What I was entitled to was fair in the technical sense, a division of jointly held assets, a settlement that reflected 6 years of shared life. What it did not reflect, because there was no legal mechanism that reflected it accurately, was the opportunity cost. The 18 months I had not relocated for. The Thursday evenings. The career trajectory that had been arranged around his schedule for 6 years and that was now, at 37, in a different place than it would have been if I had been arranging it around itself. You could not claim opportunity cost in a divorce settlement. I knew this. I accepted it. I moved into the flat in November. 2nd floor, a building in a part of the city I had not chosen, the nearest place to the house that was within what I could afford on my salary alone without the joint income that had made the house possible. The flat was not bad. It was not good either. It was small and impersonal in the way of places that have been rented by a series of different people and have accumulated none of their presence, and the bathroom window looked out onto a brick wall, and the kitchen smelled of the previous tenant's cooking regardless of what I cooked, and the bedroom had a ceiling. I spent a great deal of time looking at in the first months because sleep was something I was managing imperfectly. I went to work. I came home. I made dinner and ate it and washed the dishes and went to bed and repeated. Meg came on Tuesdays. She brought food, proper food, cooked at home, in containers, because she had correctly assessed that I was not eating well and had decided to do something concrete about it rather than something conversational. I was, in those first months, grateful for the concrete. And then November. The restaurant. David and Amanda at the far table. I stayed for my whole dinner. This was a decision I made consciously and I am still proud of it. Every instinct I had said, leave, get up, get out, get somewhere they cannot see you, and I sat with those instincts and I did not follow them. I ate my dinner. I drank my wine. I did not look in their direction more than the once. When I left I walked past their table. Not deliberately, it was the route to the door. But I walked past and David saw me and his face did the thing that faces do when a person encounters someone they have hurt and the encounter is unexpected. The specific sequence of recognition, guilt, managed recovery, the deployment of the practiced pleasantness of someone who has decided that pleasantness is the appropriate register. Kate, he said. David, I said. Amanda looked at me with the specific expression of a young woman who has been told a story about a marriage and is now encountering the person the story was about and is finding the encounter more complicated than the story had prepared her for. Nice to see you, I said to neither of them specifically. To the general space. I walked to the door. I walked home, and on the stairs of my building, on the second floor, outside the door of my flat that smelled of someone else's cooking, I sat down on the step and I held the feeling that I had been holding through the restaurant and the walk and the stairs. Not grief, not anger. The specific, exhausted sadness of someone who is at the bottom of something and knows it and is too tired to do anything other than sit with the knowing. This is the lowest it gets. From here the only direction is up. I believed it. I needed to start making it true. Meg said the thing in February. We were at the Tuesday dinner, which had continued, through all of it, with the specific consistency of a thing that does not stop regardless of circumstances. Meg was the kind of person who showed up on Tuesdays because Tuesday was the arrangement, full stop, regardless of what else was happening, and the showing up had been its own quiet form of reassurance across the darkest months. She said, I need to ask you something and I need you not to dismiss it immediately. I looked at her. The regional director position, she said. The one you turned down 5 years ago. Ms. Howard moved to Caraway Communications 2 years ago. She's the managing director now. The company is looking for a head of client strategy. I was quiet. I know it's not the same position, Meg said. I know the timing isn't. I know everything is still. Send me the listing, I said. She blinked. Just like that? Send me the listing, I said again. She sent it while we were still sitting at the table. I read it on my phone. The role was more senior than the one I had turned down 5 years ago. It required exactly the skills I had been developing for a decade and had been applying, for 6 of those years, in a direction that had made David's life easier rather than my own career better. It was, on the page, a description of things I was good at. The closing date was 3 weeks away. I'll need to update my CV, I said. I'll help, Meg said. I know, I said. You already looked at it, didn't you? She had the expression of someone who is trying to look innocent and is not entirely successful at it. I made a few notes, she said. I laughed. The first real laugh, not the managed kind, not the social kind, in 4 months. Show me the notes, I said. She remembered me. I had not been certain she would. 5 years is long enough for professional memories to blur, and I had turned down her offer, which was not the kind of thing that typically makes a person memorable in a positive sense. She remembered me. Kate, she said, when I came into her office for the interview. I wondered if I'd hear from you. I should have called sooner, I said. You called when you called, she said. Tell me where you are. I told her, not the personal details, the professional ones. Where the career had been over the 5 years. What I had done. What I had learned. Where I thought I could add value to. What she was building. She listened with the focused attention of someone who is assessing rather than just hearing. When I finished, she said, what changed? The circumstances that made me decline 5 years ago no longer exist, I said. And you're ready to be the first call on the client side? Not the support. The lead. Yes, I said. Above her head, if I had had the ability that Anna in Story 4 had, there was nothing to read because I did not have the ability. I was a different story, a different kind of clarity, but something in her expression told me what the words in the room were moving toward. You're the best candidate I've seen, she said. You've always been the best candidate. The question was always timing. The timing is right, I said. She offered me the position before I left the building. I accepted before I reached the street. I stood on the pavement outside Caraway Communications on a Tuesday afternoon in March, and I called Meg, and when she answered I did not say anything for a moment because the feeling of the moment required a second to be in before being described. You got it, Meg said. I got it, I said. The first year at Caraway was the hardest and the best work I had ever done. Hard because the role was genuinely demanding. Ms. Howard had not hired me for a comfortable position, she had hired me because she needed someone who could do difficult things, and the difficult things were real and constant and required more of me than I had been asked to give in years. Best because being asked for more, it turned out, was what I had been missing. There is a specific quality to work that fits. The feeling of your actual capabilities being engaged fully rather than partially, of being in the right place at the right size rather than arranging yourself to fit an available space. I had not felt this in years. I had forgotten what it felt like to leave a meeting having done something that mattered. I felt it now, constantly, in the specific exhausting energizing way of work that is demanding for the right reasons. I got a client on board in month 3 that Caraway had been pursuing for 2 years. I restructured the strategy team in month 5 in a way that Ms. Howard described, in the specific understated way she described things, as very good. I made decisions that were mine and lived with the outcomes and adjusted and made better decisions. I moved flat in month 6. The new flat was in a building I had chosen because the kitchen window faced east and the morning light was good and the bedroom had a ceiling that I liked the quality of and that I could look at on the occasional sleepless night without the specific oppression of a ceiling I had ended up with rather than selected. I chose it entirely for myself. That was the whole criterion. No one else's schedule, no one else's preference, no one else's comfort, the east-facing window and the good morning light and the ceiling I liked. I moved on a Saturday with Meg's help and 3 boxes and the specific feeling of someone putting something down they have been carrying without examining whether it was worth carrying. I was 38 years old. I was, for the first time in years, building something on ground that was mine. I want to be careful here about the story I am telling, because the easiest version of it would make my success a response to the divorce, as if David's leaving was the cause and my building was the effect and the whole narrative is structured around him. It was not structured around him. He was the occasion, the circumstances that changed, but what I became in the 2 years after the divorce was not what I became because of him, it was what I had always been capable of becoming when I stopped arranging myself around someone else's requirements. The distinction matters to me. By the end of the first year at Caraway I had the 3 largest client accounts. By the end of the second year I had been given the title of client director and responsibility for building the strategy team from 8 people to 15. By month 22 Ms. Howard told me, in the direct way she told people things, that she was restructuring the senior leadership and wanted to discuss what that meant for my role. I was 39. The role she was offering was 1 level below her own. I accepted, and in the ordinary Thursday evening life of those 2 years, the dinners with Meg that had become Thursdays again because my schedule was mine to arrange, the Sunday mornings in the flat with the east window and the good light, the work friendships that had developed into real ones, the gradual return of something I recognized as pleasure in the ordinary texture of daily life. I was not thinking about David. I want to be precise about this because it is important. Not performing, not thinking about him. Actually not thinking about him, in the way that people stop thinking about things that have lost their charge, that have been processed fully and filed in the category of things that happened and were survived and are no longer urgent. He had become past tense. Past tense was fine. Past tense was exactly where he belonged. I heard things. Not because I was looking for them. I had made a deliberate decision not to look for them, not to monitor the social media or ask the mutual contacts or do the things that people do when they are still oriented towards someone they are trying to tell themselves they have left behind. I had made the decision and I had kept it. But information finds its way. Especially in the professional world, which is smaller than it appears, where people who know people say things in the ordinary course of conversation that they do not realize are significant. I heard, through a mutual colleague I ran into at an industry event in month 14, that Amanda had ended the relationship with David. I noted this information. I did not feel the thing I might have felt 18 months earlier, the complicated mixture of vindication and grief that would have characterized my response if I had received it. During the restaurant period, I felt something quieter than that. The mild, impersonal interest of someone hearing news about a situation that is no longer theirs. I heard, through Meg who had maintained more of the shared social fabric than I had, that David's firm had lost 2 significant clients in a restructure that had been handled badly. I noted this. I heard that he had moved out of the house, our house, the house I had moved out of 18 months before him, and into a flat. I noted this too. None of it, individually or collectively, produced the feeling I would have expected it to produce 2 years earlier. Not satisfaction, not relief, not the complicated warm feeling of justice arriving. Just information, data about a situation I had moved on from. The person these things were happening to was someone I had known well and no longer knew. That was neither his fault nor mine. It was just the truth of what happens when lives that were joined become separate and continue separately in different directions. I filed the information and moved on. He called on a Tuesday. Not my Tuesday. Meg and I had our dinner, I was home by 9, and the phone rang at 9:15 with David's name on the screen. I looked at it. 2 years and 3 months after the kitchen table. 22 months after the restaurant. 19 months after I had stopped thinking about him in any regular way. I let it ring. He called again on Wednesday. And Thursday. On Friday he sent a message. Kate, I'd like to talk. If you're willing, just to talk. I read it. I did not respond immediately. Not because I was deciding whether to respond, I knew I would respond, because ignoring it entirely seemed like its own kind of acknowledgement, the kind that gives more weight to something than it deserves. But I took the weekend. On Monday morning I sent one message back. I can give you 30 minutes. Wednesday. My office building has a coffee place on the ground floor. 12:30. He replied within 2 minutes. Thank you. I'll be there. I put my phone away and went back to the proposal I was working on for the quarterly client review. He was there when I arrived. He had always been punctual. This was one of the things I had genuinely respected about him, the specific reliability of someone who kept the small commitments. He was sitting at a table near the window with a coffee he had not yet touched and an expression I had not seen on him before. Not the confidence, not the ease, not the practiced pleasantness, something less managed. He stood when I approached, which was the specific formality of someone who is not sure of the register and is erring toward care. Kate, he said. David, I said. I sat down. I ordered a coffee. I did not perform warmth and I did not perform coldness. I was simply present, in the way I had become present in meetings, fully attentive, entirely unperformed. He looked at me. You look, he started. You said you wanted to talk, I said pleasantly. Go ahead. He talked. It took 20 minutes. He was honest, I will give him that. He did not dress it up or manage it into something more comfortable than it was. He said he had made a mistake. He said he understood what he had given up and had not understood it at the time, and understanding it now, with the full weight of the understanding, was something he was finding difficult to manage. He said Amanda had left. He said the work was harder than it had been. He said the flat he was in was fine, but it was not. He stopped. It's not what I expected, he said. Any of it. I looked at him. He had lost some of the easy confidence of the David the first had known. Not all of it. It was not a collapse. He was not a broken person. But something had shifted in the specific way that things shift when the picture a person has been carrying of themselves meets the reality of the life their choices have produced. I want to ask you something, he said. His voice doing the specific thing of a person who has been working up to a sentence and has arrived at it. I want to ask if there is any version of the future where. No, I said. He stopped. I had not said it with cruelty. Not with anger. There was no anger left, had not been for a long time. Not with satisfaction, which would have required still caring enough to be satisfied. Just no. The plain, complete, final word. Kate, David, I said, I want to be honest with you because I think you deserve honesty more than you deserve management. What you're describing, what I think you're working toward saying, that's not something I'm open to. Not because I'm punishing you. Because I've spent 2 years building a life that I am genuinely happy in, and there is no version of that life that includes going back. He was quiet. I don't hate you, I said. I want you to understand that. What you did hurt me in ways that took a long time to recover from, and I did recover, and the recovery is mine and I'm not interested in the thing that required it. He looked at me across the coffee table. You're happy, he said. Not a question, just the observation of a man seeing something he had not expected. Yes, I said. I didn't think, he stopped. Reconsidered. I didn't expect you to be this. I know, I said. I finished my coffee. I stood up. I wish you well, I said. I genuinely do. Take care of yourself, David. I walked out of the coffee shop. Into the lobby of my building, past the reception desk, into the lift, up to the floor where my office was. I sat at my desk. I looked at the proposal I had been working on before 12:30. I picked up where I had left off. I want to be accurate about what I felt on Wednesday afternoon after I came back upstairs. Not triumph. I want to be precise about this because the story I am telling could easily be framed as a revenge narrative. The woman who was left, who rebuilt, who was presented with the satisfying moment of the ex-husband's regret and responded with the cool finality of someone who has won something. I did not feel like I had won something. What I felt was something quieter and more complete than winning. I felt indifferent, not the performed indifference of someone who is still secretly invested in the other person's pain or regret or recognition. Real indifference, the specific absence of charge that comes from having genuinely moved on, from having processed the thing fully and filed it in the past tense where it belonged and built something new on ground that had nothing to do with it. His regret was real. I had seen it. It was not a performance. He was not a performer in that sense, had never been. His regret was genuine and it was his and it was not my responsibility. His life had taken the shape it had taken because of the choices he had made. My life had taken the shape it had taken, in part because of those choices, and in much larger part because of the choices I had made in response to them. I had made good choices. Not always immediately, not without difficulty, not without the 4 months of the brick wall bathroom and the sleepless ceilings in the restaurant and the Thursday in November that had been the lowest point. But good choices, eventually. The right job, the east-facing window, the Tuesdays with Meg that became Thursdays when I could arrange Thursdays again. The work that engaged me fully rather than partially. The person I was on Wednesday afternoon at my desk was not the person I had been at the kitchen table 2 years and 3 months earlier. That person had needed David's approval, his presence, his continued choice of her, to feel like enough. This person did not. This person was enough on her own terms, in her own life, on the ground she had built. That was not triumph. That was just the way things were now. It was more than enough. The Thursday after Wednesday I had breakfast with Meg. Not the Tuesday dinner, a breakfast, which was unusual, but she had texted the night before to say she was in my area in the morning and did I want to get something before work, and I had said yes because I always said yes to Meg. We sat at the place around the corner from my building with coffee and eggs and the specific comfort of a friendship that has been through enough to not require performance. How was Wednesday? She said. Fine, I said. She looked at me with the expression she used when fine was the answer and she was assessing whether it was the complete answer. Genuinely fine, I said. He was honest. He said what he wanted to say. I said what I had to say. What did you say? No, I said. She nodded. Just nodded. No commentary, no celebration, no told you so. Just the acknowledgement of someone who had been present for the entire arc of the story and understood what the no contained. Good, she said. Yes, I said. We ate our breakfast. Outside the window the city was doing what cities do on Thursday mornings. Moving. Busy. Full of people in the middle of their lives. I thought about the Thursday evenings I had given up for David's client dinners. I thought about Meg rearranging to Tuesdays without complaint and the specific kindness of that rearrangement. You gave up Thursdays for 2 years, I said. You needed me on Tuesdays, she said, as if this were an entirely unremarkable fact. As if the giving up of Thursdays for 2 years was simply what the situation had required and she had done it and that was that. I looked at her. Thank you, I said. For the Thursdays and the Tuesdays and the 20 minutes with the tube and the containers of proper food and the CV notes and the job listing and the entire 2 years of showing up in the specific, unglamorous, consistent way that matters. You'd do it for me, she said. Yes, I said. Then it's not a debt, she said. It's just how it works. We finished breakfast. I went to work. It is a Thursday morning 2 years and 4 months after the kitchen table. I am in my office with the good morning light. The building faces east, which I had noted when I took the role and which had been, genuinely, one of the reasons, and a proposal that I have been building for a week and that is, on honest examination, good. Ms. Howard called yesterday about a new client she wants me to lead on. The conversation was the kind of conversation that happens between two people who have established, over time, that they can be direct with each other, which is the kind of conversation I find most useful and which has become, in these 2 years, the default register of my professional life. Meg is coming for dinner tonight. Thursday dinner. Properly Thursday again, in the flat with the east window, with the wine she brings and the meal I cook and the conversation that goes wherever it goes because there is no agenda. Just two people who know each other well enough to not need one. I have not heard from David since Wednesday 3 months ago. I do not expect to. I have no feelings about this. Not relief, not residual anything. Just the absence of charge that characterizes something that has been genuinely completed. I think sometimes, on the Thursday mornings, about the woman I was at the lowest point. At the restaurant, at the table alone, watching him laugh. Sitting on the stairs outside the flat that smelled of someone else's cooking. This is the lowest it gets. I had been right, not because things had gotten dramatically better overnight, they had not. Because I had made, from that lowest point, a series of choices. The job application, the east-facing window, the Thursdays restored, the 30 minutes in the coffee shop and the single honest syllable. Not dramatic choices, not the choices of someone performing a comeback. Just the choices of a person who decided, sitting on the stairs of a building she had not chosen, that the ground she was building on from now would be entirely and finally hers. It is. The proposal is good. The morning light is very good. This is mine.